First comment, that I see on here is, like I said, I'd love tips on managing emotions when you can watch yourself actively being replaced. We've all kind of probably been in that spot, right? Somewhere along the lines where you feel as if you maybe have been there for someone through a hard time, and they start to get better, then you kind of get left to the wayside. Or, the big one that I've noticed is I have some streamer friends of mine, we used to vibe and hang out with all the time back when they had like 4, 5, 6, 7 viewers. And then when they made it bigger, they got hundreds of viewers now, and they're partnered and doing all of these fun things. They kind of forget you, right? Like they kind of let where they were, they forget that, and you were a part of that, and then they kind of treat you like you're a stranger. You guys know what I'm talking about. You all probably felt that, right? Or maybe you've had a friend, right? That's something that's hard, because our first instinct to that, right? Like I have friends too, like to put it in another perspective, like I have friends who, didn't get cut from the NFL and are still living that dream that, I dreamed of forever. And our first instinct in that regard, right, is to look inward at ourselves, start to doubt ourselves, right? We start to let that doubt word creep in a little bit. We start to let ourselves wonder what's wrong with us. Why was I not good enough to be brought along that journey? Or then you start to question, well, how much of our interactions with our relationship was genuine, right? Was I just a fool? Was I just an idiot, right? All of those kind of self-doubt, that negative talk creeps into our mind, creeps into our brain, and it really takes a toll on our mental, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. The thing that we've talked about here in therapy before is the idea that we control that 6 inches of real estate between our ears, right? We control the thoughts that go in. So as always, with any of my I almost said preachings, like I'm a preacher, geez Louise. With anything that we've talked about before, the first part, right, is to raise awareness around it. And I think for the individual that put that up on Twitter, I would say that you're making a great first step of realizing that your emotions are changing because of that situation that happened. And I don't know the situation that happened exactly to you, but the first step is being aware that there's a change happening. So kudos to you for that. That's awesome. The next step is to identify what kind of changes are happening. Is it self-doubt creeping in? Is it questioning the relationship that you had with that person? Because that's two different things, right? Because one, you're projecting outward. You're questioning the relationship that you had with that person. And the other, you're questioning who you are as a person. And if there's one thing that I'm going to challenge you to do, is to be in a constant state of self-awareness around what's going on with yourself. Because out of those two situations, which one can you control? Which ones can you control? Can you control the way somebody reacts to you? Can you control the way that somebody treats you? Can you control the way somebody else values you? You can't. Exactly. So if we're constantly seeking to take control of our own life, we have to make sure that we keep control of that life. So out of those two scenarios, where do we turn? We turn to ourselves, right? And when we do that, there's a very freeing thing that happens when you really start to buy into the fact that everything that happens in your life, you have control over. We can attack it. Because if you remember, like we talked about on Monday, as long as we have a breath, we can fight, right? So how do we do that? How do we start to take control of a situation where we feel like somebody has left us or forgotten about us and what we've been through? Here's the first reframe, right? Here's the first little nugget. Is it that you're being replaced, or is it that you are a good person and helped lift that person up to the place where they're able to run on their own now? Because one of those scenarios spins your actions and what you've done in a positive way, right? We can't control who leaves us behind. We can't control the how much that the other person values who you are, but we can control how we value ourselves. So rather than looking at what was lost in that interaction, let's focus on what we've gained. So to the person that says I feel like you're actively being replaced, what have you gained? You've gained the awareness that, hey, this person isn't treating me the way I had thought, right? Because now you're placing an expectation on another human, which isn't fair. If you don't ever place an expectation on another human, you will never be disappointed. Does that mean that you have to accept the treatment that you're being given? No. So now you have a choice, right? Now you have a choice. So to the person that put that in the comments, my question to you would be, is what you're receiving back from said person? The question that I would have for you, right, is when when we look at the situation and they replaced you, are you willing to allow somebody that values you in that regard? Are you willing to allow the treatment that you're being received to continue to control your life? Like, is it worth that to you? When we turn our focus inward, right? We now no longer are giving somebody else control of our emotional state, right? We're no longer giving ourselves, we're not relinquishing the power of what makes us who we are. We're not relinquishing the power of who we are, because if all that we're trying to do, right, is we're trying to build a sound sense of awareness for ourselves, right? That's what we're all here to do. Why do we search therapy? Why do we want therapy? Because we're trying to make our mental state a better place, right? That's the goal. And therapy allows us to be able to explore our thought patterns, our thought processes, and what we do. So to that person, I would say, if you're feeling replaced, is it on you or is it on them?